Welcome to the very first episode of the Chez Davis Podcast. I'm Brendan Davis, one half of Chez Davis. My wife Susie is the other half. She's not here today, but we'll talk about why in a moment. No worries. She will be back with us on other episodes. But let me first tell you about what this is. So we have talked about doing a podcast for a while. This is meant as a complement to our regular videos that we put out on Sunday and Wednesday, and also to the live that we do on Wednesday, which the replay airs on Friday. This is its own thing. This is meant to be a casually recorded. I'm doing this Sunday night. This will come out Tuesday. I'm recording Sunday night after having had dinner, cleaning up, getting the baby to bed, etc. It's a weekly podcast, new episodes at 6 p.m. Tuesday, Central European time every week. And it's meant to be more candid and more personal and more unpolished than we aim for with the main channel. It's a space for real talk. So I will get into things that don't really fit into one of the more polished videos about our life as expats in France. And it gives room for the sort of messier, deeper reflections, because expat life can often be very messy, and what we share in the videos that we take time to really outline and edit extensively and get perfect as much as we can, there's more to it than that. So this is really meant to be more of an audio experience. It's obviously a video podcast, but it's just me talking. There are not lots of pretty pictures and B-roll and fancy graphics going in this. This is really a place to be able to talk directly to you and have it feel more like a real conversation. So why we're doing this? It's first of all to share thoughts and experiences that, as I said, don't really fit into the more polished videos that we do for kind of the main part of the channel, and have a direct conversation. It's meant to feel like we're sitting across the table chatting over a meal or a drink and being really super real with each other. Honest, spontaneous. We want to build a community space where we can trade experiences. So, I share here. Susie will be joining on some episodes. We share here. You can respond to the comments or chat with us during the lives or in the comments or the community posts, and we'll integrate that into this and talk about stuff from a very candid point of view. And we try to be very candid in everything that we're doing here, but also all kinds of people are watching a video and want the learning from that. They want to know how they can use what we talk about in their life. So the answers that we give, while always honest, based on our experience, at least if it's a, subjective kind of a thing, they're also, there's a filter that, I'm doing all the typing. Susie will tell me what she thinks when she reads a comment, and I'm pretty much always the one doing the typing because I'm kind of the guy in the back end for us of YouTube. And, we're always candid and honest, but we're also trying to answer things in a way that someone else reading it gets something from it. We're addressing your comment if you're the one commenting, but also trying to frame it in a way that's useful to other people. So with this, it's less edited, pretty much no edits on this video. I'll color correct it and I'll tweak the sound to make sure it sounds as good as it can, but otherwise you're getting this pretty much raw and unfiltered. Long term, we want this to help us grow the channel and connect with more of you more directly, and hopefully help support future projects we have coming out. We have something called the Relocation Roadmap, which will be a document that you can purchase and download that will help you with planning from beginning to end of a journey. We're going to talk about that in another video. That video is live as of the time you're seeing this. We will be recording that tomorrow. Tomorrow being, today's Sunday, tomorrow's Monday, Tuesday night is when this comes out. The video about the relocation roadmap will be linked below here. And if that's for you, great. If it's not, also great. No worries. But we want to be able to make this channel something that we can do sustainably. And to do that, we need to be able to build this community and be able to keep people engaged. And we want it to be useful. We started this because we've learned so much through our crazy journey of getting here in the first place and, establishing things, getting set up. And it's not been easy. And anything like this is challenging. And it's not the first time I've done something like this. We'll also get into that here in a little bit. But lastly, for now, in terms of why we're doing it, we would like to build this community here online and ultimately have that transition into a community that exists in real time, in real space in Paris. We would love to be able to have people come together and, whether it's break bread, have a drink, share stories. If you're visiting or if you actually are relocating yourself, we would love to, in the future, we can see this being something where we're hosting new friends from this podcast and this channel in real time, in space, in person. So we want to, you have to start somewhere. So we want to start here. So the format and structure of this, again, as I said, it's mostly me. I have a background in podcasting. I haven't done it in years, but I previously had 3 different podcasts, one with a co-host and 2 solo shows. And I did all of those. I established all those when I was an expat living in Beijing, China. And they all had their own focuses. The one with a co-host was really, I had a Chinese co-host, and she and I worked on East-West understanding and collaboration in terms of business and culture, understanding different cultural expectations. And I learned an enormous amount. We were lucky to have some fantastic guests on that show. We had everyone from successful local business people in Beijing or Shanghai or other parts of China to CEOs of major companies to ambassadors and just interesting people in general. We had Chinese people who were expats and living in other countries like America. We had Chinese who were expats who had returned home to China and decided that the grass was greener for them there in their home country. So I've learned an awful lot through that. I shut down my podcasts, the last 2 that were going. I shut them down in the early days of the pandemic when I had to leave China and go back to Los Angeles for a lot of reasons. I've said this other places where it's maybe more relevant, but in short, the same reason I left Facebook. I did not want to narrate or referee the zombie apocalypse, and I was kind of plugged into this world where I got a lot of takes coming at me. I had takes coming at me from all sides. And like everyone else, really, at the time, I was trying to figure things out and just survive. So I shut all that down, but I enjoyed it. And I miss it. So when I pitched Susie on the idea of doing this, she essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it boils down to, that's great. I think it would add value for our channel and for the people who watch our channel. And I hope you have a great time with it. Realistically, this is something that will often have a Americans moving to France focus. It's not exclusive to that at all. I'll talk about our guest composition, and we're going to have guests. I'll talk about the intended guest composition again in a few moments. But mostly, there will be a lot of actionable information about Americans who are looking at France as a place to relocate, get themselves situated in a new reality, to make a new life, remake the life that they're living, and everything really in between. So 3 out of 4 episodes are going to be me solo, talking about what's happening right now, or what I feel is most relevant to you from both what I understand from having been through this process, if you're thinking of relocating, if you're interested in France as a long-term home, or just simply what we're dealing with in the moment. There will be times when what we're dealing with is so much that we feel like, why don't we share this with people? Because it ain't easy. So I'm not saying that for sympathy, just as a reality check. This is a tricky thing to do. Again, Susie will join whenever the topic specifically makes sense, or her perspective adds value, or I told her, if she wants to do one of these solo herself, whenever she wants, that's fantastic. But this is kind of more of my thing, to mostly talk to sort of Western would-be expats who are curious. So as I mentioned, though, we will have a monthly guest interview. The goal is at least once a month. It could be more. There might be a month where we have a guest every single week, but we want to interview people such as expats who've already made the move and can share their thoughts on this. Other YouTubers who are in this space as well. French locals, right? Or other friends who live abroad or moved abroad and they have a unique experience. Not going to edit that. As I mentioned, this is very raw, but who have a unique perspective and experience to share. One of our good friends is a friend who's a Frenchie, and he lives in China. I know him from China, and we've worked on some projects in China together. We had lunch with him here when he was back for the holidays, running up to Christmas last year. And he's been a long-term expat, I think, over 10 years in China. So he has interesting experiences about France as a French person who's removed. So the goal is that we do at least one interview a month, and Susie will co-host those interviews whenever possible. Plus, as I was saying, she'll jump in here with me and co-host these. She may do a solo one every so often. I hope she does, but that's up to her. So this is a very simple production. It's one take recording. You'll hear me stumble. You'll see me pause to have a sip of my beverage, which I'm going to do now. No editing, very little editing. I'll color correct and fix the sound. It's just an honest conversation. This is meant to be very, very real. So what can you expect from this? Why are we doing this? Why should you listen and watch this? We'll talk about all kinds of topics, everything from cultural differences to family life to parenting, bureaucracy. We'll discuss politics, how French politics might affect your decision to move, what you can expect versus, say, coming from the U.S. And that's its own topic. That's its own podcast series. Just that little slice of things is obviously its own show. Plus, it's really probably its own series. But really, everyday wins and struggles, both with doing this. The comparisons we have to make are, from my point of view, as an American who also previously has been an expat, as I mentioned, in China for years. And I've traveled worldwide for years through my job and lived long-term in other countries, long enough, not like a week, months and months and months, spent many months in many countries, and have had to understand how to navigate a new and strange culture, even places where we spoke basically the same language, America and Britain, or America and New Zealand or Australia. We speak, technically we all speak English, but anyone who's been to any of those countries or is from one of those countries can tell you that, A, there's a lot of differences, B, the assumptions and cultural language, the cultural currencies are very different. I keep whacking my ring on the computer. Sorry for that ding. But, the goal is to have very honest, candid talk with you about things that may not make it into the main channel. They're not something we would necessarily make a video that's meant for a broader audience. Something, this can be very unfiltered. So we also will have occasional case studies or do Q&As based on your questions and comments in this podcast. We will continue to the weekly lives, which are Susie and I having conversations, addressing comments, talking to people who pop in and can join us during the live recording, but going through the comments of the past week and really getting into more detail about certain things. This is not meant to compete with the live. This is really meant to be something different. And the comments that you leave here, if I can't address it in full with typing in the thread that's below this, I'll address it on these subsequent episodes. So what we want this podcast to give you, practical insights into expat life in France. That's a big one. Emotional honesty about the challenges, not just the highlights. There are lots of both. We will address some of the challenges in next week's episode, which is focused on healthcare. The healthcare system here is awesome. That's further in my outline that I'm glancing at here from time to time to talk about in this episode. Healthcare system here is extraordinary, but we're currently having challenges related to reimbursements for care before the official start of our rights in the healthcare system. We'll talk about that next week. I don't have the energy and it doesn't fit into here. But the different perspectives we'll bring, American, Chinese, French from other guests and beyond. So again, the goal is a sense of connection. Whether you're planning a move, you're already living here, or you're living abroad someplace else, or if you're just curious, maybe you are settled and situated and totally happy where you live, but you're watching this for some reason. Maybe you love the French language or French culture and you kind of consume all things French. I was that guy, several years ago before this was really, it was on my radar that I was going to move here at some point for a while for work. I didn't know I was planning to move here for good. So, 5-6 years ago, I was in the headspace of, well, I've got a project that's going to bring me to Paris specifically for a year at minimum. So let me learn what I can about it. And I'd been here previously on a trip in high school way back many, many years ago. And I loved it. It was a very quick trip. Part of a European excursion. France was only like 5 days and Paris was 3 days. And I loved it. And I was here for work in between for about a week and a half, 3 weeks. I was here for about 3 weeks for work. But I knew that this was on the horizon for me, so I got curious. Maybe you're just curious, and maybe you do not want to move, or maybe you can't move. Maybe just life circumstances, finances, dependencies, care for other people. Maybe it's not practical for you to move, but you want to talk about it, think about it, hear about it from someone who's done it. I'm here for that. I'm here for any of your questions or comments. So what I want to do for the focus of this episode, that's what this is about. That applies to everything we're going to do moving forward. For this episode, I want to talk about why move to France. So we're going to do a breakdown by the various life stages that people are in. So first, we will talk about students. Then we'll jump way ahead to the other end of the spectrum and talk about retirees or pre-retirees. Then digital nomads, which are obviously working age people who like to bop around and flit around from country to country. And then the bulk of people, I think the bulk of you watching, I have a fair amount of retirees or pre-retirees and a few students who are probably moving more into this category of working age professionals. Everything from, early 20s to early 60s, right? That is the bulk of the people watching this channel from what I see on the demographics. So, I had the most to say about that because that's us. But let me talk about this. First of all, regarding students, like why would you want to move to France if you are a student, i.e. a college student? Well, I pulled some statistics, so to get it right, I'll be looking at my notes here sometimes. But first of all, France ranks 5th globally in education systems overall. There are multiple top-ranked universities in the global top 100, including Paris-Saclay, the Sorbonne, University PSL, and there's some others. The tuition at public universities is massively subsidized by the French government. So EU students pay between about 170 euros to 380 euros per year, depending on their degree level. Now, that's not per hour or per class, per unit, per year. 170 to about 380 euros. Non-EU students pay between about 2,800 to 3,900 euros a year. That's cheaper than not only most countries, but most community colleges in the U.S. by far. It's very affordable. Now, yes, you have to pay for your living expenses. That's just your tuition and whatnot. But it's incredibly affordable to go to university here, whether you're undergrad, master's, or even a doctoral student. There are student hubs like in Grenoble and Strasbourg, many programs that range between about 175 to 250 euros per year. And the main benefit, I think, and you see this in people in brochures trying to sell you on coming here as an expat, as a foreign student. But if you study in France, that opens pathways to so much. That opens up a pathway to residency in France, if you want, after graduation. We have some new friends through the new daycare for our baby. They came here from Vietnam and 20 years ago for university, and they stayed, and they've been French citizens now for like 15 years, I believe, is what the husband said. But, they came here as students, they stayed, they worked, they kept working, then they mastered the language. Residency requires, like permanent residency, citizenship requires mastery of the language. But studying here in university opens pathways to residency. You have the cultural immersion that is extraordinary, because there are English language programs at many universities. But even if you're in an English language program, if you're living here, you're going to pick up a lot of French, unless you totally have your head in the sand. And I don't know why you would do all these things. So building that language fluency, yes, you have to study for it still, but you're surrounded by it. You're soaking in it all the time. So you're going to absorb a lot of things naturally. So the next group of people I want to talk about are pre-retirees or retirees. So, of course, by pre-retirees, I mean it's on your radar. You're not there yet. You're still working, but you're thinking, when I retire, I don't know if I want to stay where I am. And for whatever reason, France is on your radar. So, first of all, the thing to say is that retirement budgets will stretch significantly further here than they would in the U.S. The cost of living overall much cheaper. Yes, Paris is expensive, but you're probably not moving from Wetumpka, Alabama. No offense to my friends in Wetumpka, Alabama. You're probably not moving from Wetumpka, Alabama to Paris. Maybe you are. Congratulations, you're probably one who's done that. But odds are, if you're moving to Paris, you're probably moving from a medium-sized city or bigger. So you have some sense of scale of what it costs for housing, the kind of housing you want, the kind of housing you get here. We live in the suburbs. We get 5 times the house for the value that we would if we were just about 20 minutes that way. So you have a really high quality of life. You have world-class food. The food in France is some of the best in the world. It is light years better than America between additives, the safety and quality standards. There's no comparison. So you have world-class food. French culture is amazing. If French culture is not for you, you're probably not watching this channel. So I feel like I can speak to you like a fellow traveler and like a friend. So you probably already appreciate French culture if you're watching this. If you don't, you're probably watching the wrong damn podcast. But welcome. Anyway, maybe you'll learn something that inspires you to keep an open mind and learn more stuff. But the culture here is amazing. And then healthcare. I mentioned that next week's video will be on some issues we're having, but that's about a technical aspect of things. The actual French healthcare system consistently ranks among the best in the world in terms of quality, access, and patient care. It's historically ranked number 1 by the World Health Organization. Now, if you're someone who is skeptical of the World Health Organization, again, you're probably not watching this. I'm probably talking to someone who lives in objective reality and doesn't think the WHO is a demon. The point being, yes, America has absolutely some of the best physicians, specialists, facilities in the world, leading edge, cutting edge, top of the fruit at the top of the tree level, people and facilities. However, the system, I'm going to say this in a way that doesn't make me get problems on YouTube. The system is screwed. The system is broken in the U.S. And I don't need to sell that. It's self-evident. If you live in the U.S., you know what I'm talking about. If you observe and you have an objective point of view, you can research this and see what I'm saying. But the system here is extraordinary. It's very, very affordable. We pay typically, now we're in the system. We have our health card, our carte vitale. The tier 1, like the regular class of doctors, you have doctors who can charge above the standard, but then there's the standard rate. We pay between, depending on what the visit's for, depending on how in-depth the consultation is. The consultations are always like half an hour. There's none of this like 5 minutes in and out of the doctor's office. I have not had that experience once since we've been here. And between me and my wife and having a baby who needs just regular baby stuff, checkups, besides the occasional, illness or something, we've been in and out of doctors. We have a family doctor. We've been in and out of multiple facilities and doctors. I don't even know how many dozens of times. The cost ranges, depending on what you need, between, out of pocket, between €8 and about €28. Now, that's that's copay range if you have really great American insurance. Susie's OBGYN, who delivered the baby, is a tier 2 doctor, and he's one of the absolute best in France. His rate, non-subsidized, is €150. That's his full rate for the consultation that takes 30 to 45 minutes, and checkups and getting under the hood of the ladies and everything. €150, that's about $165 based on 165, 170, depending on the exchange rate. So that's with no insurance, because we last went to him when we didn't have the insurance yet. And he's extraordinary. So healthcare, you can't beat it here. Now, there are some health-based immigration restrictions. We're going to look into some of those things, like the exceptions for relocating and becoming an expat here. There are some restrictions based on certain health conditions. It's very limited though, but we'll look at that in later episodes as we need to. But the bottom line is that if you are coming here for retirement, there are a lot of issues. We'll talk about this as we mention this relocation roadmap that we are in the process of finalizing and putting together. You can learn more about that in the link here in the description, where we talk about all the different paths to moving here. And there are some details that are going in there. Those sections are about halfway fully written, and they're thoroughly outlined. So we'll look at that a little bit more deeply later. But for now, understand that it's very accessible for most people. Your money's going to go a lot further. You aren't double taxed. Again, I'm not a tax professional. I'm not giving tax or legal advice. That's my disclaimer for the whole video and for the whole series. I'll probably have to say this every time we do this. I'll probably have to say this, so bear with me if you get tired of hearing it. It's important that I put it out there. I'm not a tax professional or a lawyer. However, generally speaking, you're not going to be taxed here on your retirement income in another country, generally speaking. So that money that you have coming into your accounts in the States, and you bring a certain amount here to pay your bills, that's your money. That's your money. You don't have to give it up. So, sip of beverage. Let's talk about digital nomads. That's the phrase that pays for a lot of like kind of under 30s, footloose and fancy free types. God, how old am I that I'm saying footloose and fancy free? Jeez, I feel pretty freaking old saying that. And I'm saying freaking because I'm mindful of YouTube standards. My own language wouldn't say freaking. So digital nomads, though. First of all, there's no dedicated digital nomad visa in France, right? You can still work remotely here while you're either on a tourist, a standard visa or a 90-day tourist allowance. You can do your remote work here. If you're here longer than that, it gets complicated and tricky. And again, you want to talk to one of those tax professionals or legal types to find out your situation. But basically, compared to visa-free countries, France may require more planning for the digital nomads among us. And we'll get into that deeper in later episodes. One of my great friends from Los Angeles, my friend Jack Squire, he's a digital nomad for years. And I forget how many countries he went to last year. But I forget how many he's been to this year. He posts little things. We're good friends, and I sort of see his posts go by on Instagram. France is a place that people like him come for a week or two a year, but they don't come here. They really truly come here for vacation when they're mostly off work. If you're a digital nomad, you're probably not really ever off of work. It sort of seems from the outside that you're maybe always on vacation, but the reality is if you're doing it well and doing it right, you're never really off, which is part of the idea, is that you're planning yourself. You're not maybe planting a flag, but you're setting down your suitcase in a place for a limited amount of time where you can enjoy living and experiencing a culture, and you're able to do whatever work it is you do remotely. But France is not really set up for digital nomads. There are many other European countries who will welcome you with open arms and give you a big wet sloppy kiss. Portugal's rules are changing. Portugal and Spain have been some of the places. There are a lot of Eastern European countries that are more geared toward this. Albania, as I understand. Again, don't quote me on anything that's related to these rules are always changing. Countries will change this stuff kind of at the drop of a hat. But there are a lot of Eastern European countries that, as an American growing up in the U.S., I thought, why would I want to go to blah, 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 fill in the blank? Well, I've seen photos and videos and reports from people who visited or live in some of those places, and they're pretty great places to visit in almost every country on planet Earth. And, there are a lot of people who really enjoy Albania or Yugoslavia or Serbia. So, who am I to judge? I'm happy in the Paris suburbs because I'm that age. But understand, as I was saying, that France itself is not really geared toward digital nomads, but you can make it work at least up to 90 days on a tourist visa if you're American and have the 90-day visa-free travel. But that also uses up your 90 days in the Schengen zone, so you have to factor that in. So, anywho, you want to get if you want to stay here longer, or if you plan to go to other places in Europe, you actually want to get a visa so that you're not burning your tourist allowance. But you probably know this already if you're in that category. Lastly, let's spend most of this time talking about working age professionals, people like me, people like my wife. So why do people like us think about relocating? Well, many people like us want to relocate because they want a better quality of life while they're still working. They want the work life to be more pleasant, to feel more rewarding and more productive for them. Now, the high cost of U.S. healthcare and services contrasts sharply with France. As I was saying, in France, you have better care on average, much more convenient care. You have far lower out-of-pocket costs, and you basically have infinitely less anxiety. I have to look this up. Before I started recording this, it occurred to me as when I was reviewing my outline, I thought, I wonder if the French even have a word for medical debt. They probably don't. I mean, I'm sure you could say that in French somehow, but there's not like some, I don't imagine that there's some handy catchphrase for medical debt, because French people don't have it, because they have a system that isn't designed to screw people. The system is designed to have everyone be as healthy as they can be, because they have this crazy idea that healthy people equal happier and more productive people and a more harmonious society, and they're all about that. Go figure. It's a radical concept. These radical Europeans, I love them myself. So if you're here, you can enjoy excellent food, right? Less political tension day to day. Come back to that in a second. And just a more balanced lifestyle. The live-work balance here, it takes some getting used to, honestly. Coming from an American perspective, and in my particular line of work, I'm either between projects, and so that it's up to me to do the development work and to do everything else day to day to day. And now that we're running this YouTube channel, it's a lot of work. I mean, this is basically a full-time job for me. I'm working 60, 70 hours a week on this YouTube channel, unpaid as of now. So, don't cry for me, Argentina. We're working to be monetized. We will have, as I mentioned, the relocation roadmap. We'll have a modest, cost for that, and maybe some of you will get that, and that's great if it's for you. But we want to do this. This is fun, and while I'm between projects, it sort of keeps me out of trouble. It gives me what's the old saying? Idle hands are the devil's workshop. Well, my hands are not idle. My hands are fully non-idle at this point. So if you are a working age person, you want a better quality of life. The live-work balance here is extraordinarily different than America. The standard workday is 7 hours. Now, I know plenty of French people who work 10 hours a day at their job, plus they have a commute of perhaps an hour, 2 hours each way. But fact is that the standard workday is 7 hours a day, 5 days a week. Employers cannot contact you after hours by phone or by email or text. They literally are not allowed to do it. There are exceptions. The comments may become full of people talking about the exceptions. I understand it. That's fine. List them out for people so I don't have to, please. But the general rule is that they are not allowed to bug you after hours or on the weekends, unless that's part of the nature of your job and it's in your contract that you work this X amount of hours or have this much off-duty availability. So, the French philosophy is that you should work to live, not live to work. And of course, it's sort of the opposite. And it's the opposite in the US. It's the opposite in China. In China, that some of the hardest working people you've ever met are Chinese people. They work insanely long hours. They're expected to be available. Sorry, there's a mosquito I'm trying to grab and kill off camera so he doesn't bite me. I think I got him. Chinese people work incredibly hard, incredibly long hours. And it's brutal to where, Susie would sometimes, when we were back in Beijing, she might get a text, if they were in the middle of some sort of project, she might get a text at 3 a.m. from, text within like the platform, the corporate messaging platform they were using, called Ding Talk, part of something called Ding Dang. She might get a message that her, manager would say, okay, so I sent you blah, blah, blah. I need you to give me your revisions ASAP. That meant, get to your, get out of bed, get on your computer, make the revisions and send it to me ASAP. I'm waiting. At like 3 a.m. on like a Saturday. Totally insane from my point of view. Most Americans right now are going, well, F that and blah, blah. Okay, well, that's their culture. That's the system. That's the society. France would also go, sacre bleu. No thank you, mon Dieu. Not happening here. That's not how things work here. So, more balanced lifestyle awaits you if you want to come here and work. Less political tension. Well, French politics, I did a video about this early on with the channel, and it's probably not my best video, but it was a short, but I basically said something along the lines of, if you think American politics are crazy, try France. And I kind of detailed some of the different things because there are multiple parties, multiple competing factions. What's interesting is that even very opposing, like the far left and the moderate right, often have to come together to achieve something that where they find the alignment and the agreement, and they form a coalition. So there are always these coalitions being formed. Totally fascinating as an American, because we're used to basically a two-party system and then a noisy kind of third rail that seeks to influence one or the other party essentially. But in France, you have incredibly divergent points of view and shades of gray between like the far right, the center right, to the center left, to the far left. And then you have basically these extremes, and they're all in full display in election season. You get to watch these debates on French television, and that is totally fascinating. And that's part of how Susie and I have worked on some of our French, is watching these sorts of shows, these political shows with the translation going. So, politics are pretty interesting, but what you don't have, you get the French reaction to, say, the U.S. and the current administration, but you're not living in the day-to-day reality of that. So, there's a lot more I could say about this. I won't right now. Not because I'm scared, just because life is short and there aren't enough hours in the day to tell you what I think about that in detail. But you can probably guess from the way I'm saying this. Having said that, it's awfully nice to live here and not be, not living under the thumb of the Mango Mussolini. So I'll say that much. Pluralistic values are embedded culturally. This is something that's mind-blowing to me. Does not matter where you're from, regardless of your background, your ethnicity, your race, anything about you. If you become French, right? You live here long enough to become a French citizen, you are French. Doesn't matter what you were beforehand, you're French. And of course, individual people, right? There are racists and nativists of all kinds, and they exist on both ends of both spectrums of politics. Tends to be a bit more on one side. Having said that, this is embedded in the culture, and the average person holds this very dear. It's part of what they're proud about being French, is like, oh, you came here, you made the effort, you're assimilating into the society. Maybe you dress differently, right? Maybe you wear religious clothing that's different than what I wear, etc. But you're French. And to me, that's pretty amazing. So, regardless of what your specific working situation is, the relocation roadmap, as I've referenced now 3 times, I think, we'll talk about, okay, are you an employee of a company? You want to get a job here? Are you an entrepreneur of some kind and you want to move a business here or establish a French version of what you already do? Or do you want a totally different change? Do you want to come here maybe as an investor, maybe just as a skilled person in your area, and see what you can see, and you have the resources to buy yourself some time to do that? Good for you if that's the case. Congratulations. But regardless of what it is, living here and working here as someone who has more years ahead of them to work, this is a good place to do it. Taxes are high, but you get a lot for your taxes. You get a lot more for what you pay relative to what you pay in the States. And that's just, I don't need to go on about that because it's easily searchable and provable, and you find out for yourself. But that's our experience. That is prima facie obvious if you live here, what you get for your money. So the key takeaways that I want to give you to think about are, think about your current life, right? Think about where you are in your life stage, what your stage of life is, and your goals. What do you want more of in your life? Do you want adventure? Do you want peace? Are you looking for education, or do you want to need security? Maybe this is your first move. Maybe you mean for this to be your last move, and then everything in between. So that's what you want more of. And what do you want less of? If you want less, cost stress, cultural chaos, and political noise. You can be an observer of French politics, but until you're a French citizen, you can't engage. You're welcome to your opinion, but you can't vote, you can't engage in it, but you can observe it, and it's better than any reality show I've ever seen, to be fair. So again, you want more adventure, peace, education, security, and less cost stress, less cultural chaos, less political noise. See if France fits that vision. It does for us, and we're going to talk in later episodes specific examples, things we've been through, things that guests of ours have been through they can share with you. But we're going to talk about what that's like. And, we hope that you enjoy it, and we're glad that you're here, and hopefully continue along for the ride. So, again, we made this podcast to try to speak really freely in a way that I don't have to cover it with lots of pretty pictures, B-roll and text and everything, where I can just talk to people. And in this episode, talking about the why. You really need to think about the why. There's what stage of life you're in, but like, why do you want to do it? And what do you want to get out of it? Those are questions that only you can answer for yourself. So remember, the new episodes are coming every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central European Time. And we want you to share your thoughts. Please comment in the comments down below, which is the natural place to comment. Give us your questions, okay? Give me any feedback on this, suggestions for topics you want us to do a deep dive on. We're going to do this every week. So I need your feedback to be able to add to what I'm going to do anyway. I want to get your feedback. I want to work your questions and thoughts and commentary into this whole thing. So thanks for tuning in to the first episode of the Chez Davis Podcast. If you're not subscribed, you know what to do. Please give us a subscribe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.